Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our FireSmart at the Cottage webinar hosted by FOCA and featuring Shane McCool from the Aviation, Forest, Fire, and Emergency Services branch of the Ministry of Natural Resources. Next slide. We start this meeting by recognizing and thanking the traditional stewards of the lands and waterways where we work and live. The waterfront lands of Ontario are the traditional territories of many diverse Indigenous peoples who recognize the sacredness of water, the interconnectedness of all life, and the importance of protecting land and water for the generations yet to come. We are all on a journey towards truth and reconciliation and offer this recognition as an important step in that journey. We are joining this virtual meeting from different locations, and I encourage each of you to dedicate yourselves to move forward in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, learning, and sharing that learning. Next slide. We're glad you could join us this afternoon for the webinar. I'm Deanna Forgy, the Programs Coordinator here at FOCA, and I have Gavin Vance, FOCA's Assistant Lake Stewardship Coordinator, behind the scenes assisting with the slides. Before we launch into the webinar this afternoon, we'd like to get started with some housekeeping. Next slide. The webinar format has some limitations in terms of what level of discussion is possible. To start, we've muted all attendees' lines to reduce noise disruptions during the presentation. If you experience technical difficulties, for example, if the sound cuts out or your video feed is stalling, our best advice is to close out the meeting window completely and find and re-click the join link in the email we sent you originally. You can type comments or questions in the chat feature of Zoom, which you'll find if you mouse over the screen or tap if you're on an iDevice today. Click the chat button to open a portal where you can type messages of a technical nature or questions for the presenter. Please write in your questions as soon as it occurs to you, although understand we'll be holding questions till the end of the presentation. Next slide. I'd like to speak briefly about FOCA before we turn it over to our feature speaker. FOCA is the Federation of Ontario Cottagers Associations, a not-for-profit membership organization representing waterfront property owners. FOCA has over 525 associations and represents 50,000 families across the province. If your association is a member, you are too. And if you're not, we hope you join us through your local association or individually as a friend of FOCA. Next slide. FOCA is the only go-to provincial advocacy organization committed to sustaining and enhancing the Ontario cottage experience. We work collaboratively to identify and address key issues by providing credible expertise, environmental stewardship, targeted programs and services, and a robust network of strategic partners. We serve local lake and road associations while protecting the water for future generations of families to enjoy. FOCA is the voice of the waterfront to government and to science and research partners. We also act as the hub of a network of your peer associations across the province. We work on long-term issues, including rural services, water level management, and preventing pollution and invasive species from negatively impacting our waterways. Next slide. Member associations receive support on best practices and governance issues and a discount on liability insurance through the FOCA insurance program. That coverage also includes access to a legal helpline for the association's questions. All your member families are entitled to benefits and offers from FOCA sponsors and partners, including discounts on automated external defibrillators and Cottage Life magazine subscriptions. But the largest dollar benefit of membership is the opportunity for each of you to join the Cottage First group insurance program for your cottage, your boat, your home, your car, and so on and so forth. This program is administered by Kate Associates and is underwritten by Travelers Canada. We encourage you to get a quote as your insurance comes up for renewal and see what you could be saving. Members also receive a login to access additional resources on the FOCA website, including past event recordings, access codes for discounts, and much, much more. Members also attend FOCA events at the discounted member rate. Next slide. FOCA communicates, educates, and advocates on the issues that matter most to the continued quality of life at the waterfront. And we do it year-round through events, marketing of our messages, and materials to the general public. We want to make it easy for you at your AGM this summer to get approval from your membership to keep supporting FOCA with your membership dollars. If you're showing value and leveraging your FOCA member benefit value, you have a lot to offer. We encourage you to circulate the member benefits information to each of your member families. There's a digital sheet you can download from our website, and it contains links to the current offers and any access codes that are needed. There's also a version of the benefit sheet without codes that you can use in a local membership drive to encourage more people to join your local association to access the FOCA member benefits. Next slide. You may have been hearing in the news over the past while that the huge exodus to cottage country that began during the pandemic seems to have lost steam, and now the for sale signs are going up. If people purchase sight unseen, they may not have realized there was spotty internet or no winter road access, and so on. FOCA is reaching out on social media and creating video resources, hoping to educate people as they start their research for a cottage property. And we advise them to get connected with the local lake association right away to be in the know about local services and considerations. We encourage you to welcome new property owners in your area by repurposing our welcome sheet templates, which gives some tips about living in rural waterfront settings and what to watch out for. Next slide. Thank you to the 284 associations who participated in our 2024 benchmark data survey. The demographics of the respondent associations were roughly representative of the various sizes of our member groups. The survey results contain data about how many groups have written bylaws, carry insurance, what groups charge an annual association dues, and trends among those whose membership is up or down this year. In the survey, we asked you to rank your association's top priorities, and there are many popular answers, including interest in lake plans, road resources, and governance issues. FOCA has web pages devoted to these topics and many more. Use the search bar on the website to find what you're looking for, or contact the office for assistance during business hours. Together, we can ensure associations remain strong and Ontario's lake communities remain healthy, vibrant, and resilient for generations to come. Next slide, please. Our print and video productions cover a huge range of topics, from septic systems to wake impacts, rural road issues, short-term rental, invasive species, and much, much more. Contact the FOCA office if you could use fact sheets or copies of our printed guides to share with fellow members, and help us to keep spreading the word about the important role each of us has to be a good steward of the waterfront for the generations yet to come. Next slide, please. So FOCA is often asked, what's this weed in my water? And our new guide to aquatic plants was created to help you answer that question on your own Ontario waterfront. Access your digital copy today or reach out to the FOCA office to receive a hard copy. Next slide. FOCA has a number of ongoing programs to prevent the spread of invasive species or manage them after their arrival. And our longstanding Lake Partner program of water quality monitoring across Ontario is the largest volunteer effort of its kind. Thank you to the more than 600 volunteers who help us with this work every year. And FOCA is working hard to ensure this important program continues to support Waterfront Ontario. Next slide, please. And because cottage country is remote, we all need to learn how to be resilient and prepared in the face of emergencies. And that's what we're talking about today. So I'd like to pass it over to Shane, who's going to talk about FireSmart at the cottage. And remember to type in your questions as they occur to you, and we'll address them in the Q&A session. So over to you, Shane.
Thanks, Deanna. That's great, great information there for the group. Yes, we'll be speaking about FireSmart principles at the cottage and different things that you can do to increase the resilience of your cottage or home in rural areas. And so, one thing I would like to mention prior to beginning the conversation today is everything I'm going to present to you today is from a provincial perspective. And so, it is also important that if you reside within a municipality, that you should be looking at your local bylaws as well. There are sometimes, especially in cottage country, some bylaws that might contradict some of the information I'm presenting today. And so it's very important that you are aware of what the restrictions may be in your local area. So with that, I'll share my screen and we'll jump into the presentation here. So today, I'm just going to talk about a few elements of FireSmart, and I'm going to keep it fairly simple and concentrate on what you can do at the homeowner or resident level. There's also a number of things that you can do at the sort of community level or neighborhood level, which we can I'll touch on briefly, but certainly I want to focus a lot today on the resident and homeowner level. So as we jump in, FireSmart is a strategy for wildland fire protection. It's essentially the goal here is to do ignition. It's not ignition prevention, really. What we're trying to deal with the FireSmart program is how we can be more resilient. So, uh, what can we do to our structures once the fire is already burning to sort of reduce the chances of that fire spreading to those structures? And then the nice part is that there's a lot we can do, contrary to popular belief. There's a lot we can do to increase our resilience. And so we're aiming to just prevent the structures from burning. But we do understand that there's a natural element to wildland fires in Northern Ontario, having a major part of our the natural cycle in our ecology, and having that rejuvenation factor as well. So as folks living in that ecology, we do have to adapt accordingly. So the good news for us is that there's a relatively small amount of fuel reduction in what we call the home ignition zone that's going to decrease your structure's ignitability. So even when you consider the highly intense crown fires, there's still a lot we can do. Science is telling us that that can increase our resilience and give us a much better chance of surviving that major wildland fire event. And so the research that we've seen throughout the years, this I believe it was the late 80s and throughout the 90s with a gentleman named Jack Cohen, and he was out of the U.S. Fire Service, and they did some burning up in the Northwest Territories to sort of truth some of the theories around the FireSmart concepts. And what the research shows is that about 85 to 90% of homes without flammable roofs, so that would be your steel roofing or your asphalt shingles, are well rated for wildland fires. As long as they have that 10 to 20 meters of clearance from the forested area, they can survive major wildland fire events. What we're finding is it's not the big flames that often come and consume the homes or the structures. It's the little things. It's those embers that account for over half of all home ignitions. And so if we can manage the transfer of embers to the structures, we're going to be in a much better spot for our resilience. And here's how we do it. We create these fuel modified areas. And so if you look at the photo from the right side of your screen, moving to the left side of your screen, you can see that we have a forest that's in an untreated area. So no work has been done to mitigate the impacts of the fire in that forest. So the fire would ignite, it would spread, and eventually, if the conditions were right, it could turn to a crown fire, which is a fully involved fire from the ground to the tops of the trees. And that would be a very intense situation. But as you can see, we move further to the left of the screen, the fire now has reached the fuel treatment area where there's proper steps taken. We're not clear cutting an area, but we're certainly reducing the fuel load and taking the right steps as far as laddering fuel, which I'll touch on here as we go through the presentation. The idea being as the fire moves closer to the structure, it has less and less fuel to consume. And so it can burn around your structures rather than burning right through it. And so this is the flagship concept that I want to talk about here today. This is called the home ignition zone. And I would say if you get nothing else out of my presentation, this is the bread and butter here that I'd like you to sort of focus in on. It's the three zones to focus in on are the immediate zone, the intermediate zone, and the extended zone. And so that you always start at the home and work your way out in order to have the most impact to create that resilience for your home and your structures alike. So we'll start in the immediate zone, or actually at the home before we even get into the immediate zone. What we're looking at for the resilience side of things is the roof. The roof is the number one factor that we need to consider. Obviously, if you have the cedar shake shingles, the amount of work that you're doing in and around your property isn't going to have much impact if you have embers landing on sort of a cedar shake shingle untreated and igniting your home from the roof. And so it's important to have that material that's well rated for fires. And so, like I said earlier, it's the asphalt shingles are great, and also the steel roofs are a really good option as well. The roof cleanliness also plays a role. As you can imagine, the valleys in the different homes, if you have an accumulation of fuel on the roof, such as pine needles and an ember lands there, and it has an opportunity to ignite, Even if it doesn't ignite the shingles, if it has an opportunity to spread to something else on the roof, maybe there's a embedded window in there with some wood framing or whatever the case may be, that fire can now spread to the rest of the home. And so it's really important to maintain the cleanliness, and then the litter and any overhanging branches as well is something you want to consider. The eaves and vents and soffits, any openings that would allow embers or heat or direct flames to enter into the home are a consideration as well. Even your vinyl soffits, they could melt and expose what's behind the vinyl there, and offer another opportunity for fire to transfer to the home or structure. As we continue on, we're going to now move down to the exterior walls. So we start at the roof, we work our way down and then out from the home. And so we're looking at now the exterior walls and the impacts of them. The combustibility is going to vary and how those embers can lodge. But certainly we're looking at anything that is combustible, like wood siding or even your vinyl siding could potentially melt and allow embers to lodge themselves behind whatever's behind the siding and potentially ignite that way. The next thing we're looking at are the deck and balconies and fences. So the flammability there, it's going to allow for the transfer of embers from the deck to the home. Now, when we're treating our properties, we treat the deck, the balcony as part of the home. Fences are a separate item, and there's some treatment options for fences, which I'll touch on a little bit later on as well. But the fence, obviously, we know a lot of our decks are made of wood, so those are a bit of a concern in that sense. But when it's possible, if you're upgrading your deck and you have the means to move to sort of a composite type of material, that's a really great option. I've seen folks using different treatment materials, such as some different kinds of paints or stains that are a little bit more resistant to fire, but also even really the most volatile area of the deck is right up against the home. So if an ember lodges on the deck and has an opportunity to spread against the home, that's where we see a lot of the transfer of the fire. In many cases, an ember landing in the middle of the deck might not be as much of a concern, statistically speaking, but certainly something we want to watch for as well. The other factor with the decks is patio furniture and any combustible material on the decks that we want to watch for. So often I tell folks that, if you have that patio furniture out, if you're just putting it away after you're done using it, then it's less of a concern if that ember comes and lands on a cushion. It doesn't necessarily have the opportunity to ignite the same way if that cushion's put away, if it's just landing on sort of the deck surface, right? So things to consider in that regard. The next factor we look at is the windows and doors. So again, these are variable resistance. And as you have older cottages or older camps or homes, you may have sort of that single ply window. Ideally, you want to have the double ply window or the resisting the heat factor, because what happens is if that window is collapsed from the heat, the radiant heat, then it's going to allow an entry point for the embers to enter into the home. And when you have that situation, we know the inside of the home is extremely vulnerable to ignition. So certainly we want to make sure we have the properly rated windows in order to resist that factor. Nearby combustibles. So now we're working out from the home and we're working into that immediate zone. So we want to create that 1.5 meter area as a non-combustible zone. So anything that nearby the structures, things like firewood or window boxes or furnitures, scrap lumber, even fences, that's going to offer an opportunity for embers to ignite and then transfer to the home. And so there's different things we can do. So the firewood pile, I would say a great option is to move it from the immediate zone out to 10 meters or beyond, and that's going to eliminate that risk. Or if you really do need that firewood pile next to the home, maybe you use a steel box or a welding blanket or something like that to mitigate the impact of embers on that firewood pile. And when you're ready to upgrade your window boxes, maybe you use a different material that's not combustible, some type of plastic or composite perhaps, or just cover the wood with another material that's not going to ignite as easily from embers. And certainly we mentioned the furniture and scrap lumber, even under decks, as as you get embers rolling in under decks, if it has something to ignite under there, it's going to transfer up to the deck and then your home. So certainly you want to either close off the decks ideally, and then remove that scrap lumber to 10 meters outside of away from the home, or any structures in that regard. And the fences are a really interesting one. A lot of folks have the wood fences, and I'm not suggesting to replace the entire fence. We all know the price of composite fences is not an easy one either. Ideally, that's the best choice, but certainly just that first 5 feet, or that 1.5 meters from the home. Maybe if you just switch out the one section, and then won't allow the fire to sort of wick its way towards the structures. So it's a really good feature that we see in a lot of homes that are taking these FireSmart initiatives, is maybe just a chain link fence for that first 5 feet, and then allow the rest of the fence to remain as the wood, or just switching out to composite that first 5 feet. And then you can kind of upgrade it as you go as well from that perspective. But really good option there as well to increase the resilience. The next one is the slope factor. So if you have a home or cottage on a slope, what you want to do is just increase the home ignition zone factors. So the steeper the slope, the faster fire is going to move up that hill, and therefore the more intense the fire is going to be as well. And so what you want to do is, if you have that sort of immediate zone at 1.5 meters on flat ground, maybe you move it to 2 meters on a slope, or 2.5 or 3 meters even, if you want to play it safe in that regard. So if you have a really steep slope, I would definitely recommend going 2 meters or more as a really good option to reduce your ignitability for the slope factor. So let's look a little bit at the vegetation, and we're going to scan all vegetation around the home in the ignition zone, but not all vegetation is the same. And I'll touch on that a little bit as well throughout the presentation. But what we're really looking at is the coniferous and the grass fuels, something that can easily be ignited. Trees with the leafy component, even birch trees to a certain degree, are less of a concern, especially when we get into full green up conditions. They're not necessarily going to be impacted by fire the same way as a coniferous tree would be. The oily resins in those trees often will allow a fire to spread quite easily, especially in dry conditions. Whereas the moist sort of factors of the deciduous trees would require a lot more energy for fire to consume those types of trees. The birch, of course, is flammable, but if it's not right up against your home, it's much less of a concern. It's not going to transfer fire the same way. Also, one thing you do want to consider with the birch is it is susceptible to ember transfer, and so that it could potentially be ignited by embers, but also be ignited and then pushed towards the home by transferring the birch bark through the air onto ignitable structures or ignitable items near the home. But some of the factors we're looking for when we are looking at vegetation is, as I mentioned, that sort of grassy fuels, dead grassy fuels, the moisture characteristics that I just touched on, but we're also looking at the amount of fuel. So if you have a large amount of conifer trees sort of stuck together, that's going to allow a lot of energy for that fire when it does transfer to that area. Whereas if they're sparsely distributed across your property, it might be a lot more challenging for the fire to impact those species. So we talk a lot about sort of the horizontal and vertical sort of factors as well. I mentioned laddering fuels. If you can think about how a fire is going to spread along the ground, if it has, let's say, a white spruce tree, your Christmas tree style tree, with the needle component going right to the ground, you could easily ignite those needles and then transfer up the tree. And if that tree is under a larger pine tree, it's now going to transfer to the top of that other pine tree as well, or have the potential to in the right conditions. And so those are what we consider the laddering fuels. So if we reduce the amount of laddering fuels, or we selectively choose which trees to keep on the property, we can significantly increase our resilience as well. I mentioned horizontal spread. Just spacing out those coniferous trees is an ideal way of dealing with the resilience factor as well. Some of the strategies we can use for vegetation management include the fuel removal, fuel reduction, and fuel conversion. And what we mean by conversion is simply taking maybe that cedar tree that's right up against your structure and either moving it to 10 meters or beyond on your property, or converting it so you can remove it and then plant something new there in its place, something that's much more resilient to fire. Maybe it's a deciduous type of tree, or a plant that has that leafy component. And the nice part about this is FireSmart Canada has a guide, a landscaping guide, the second edition on firesmartcanada.ca, which has hundreds of different plants available to you that you can plant right up against the home that are going to be resilient to ember transfer. And so a lot of great options there. But I'd also offer a fourth strategy in this regard. If you have it could be isolation. So if you have sort of a tree that has it's a coniferous tree, but it may have sort of significant meaning to you, and maybe you planted it with your grandfather, or it's being used for medicine, or whatever the case may be, you can isolate that tree and still have a significant impact on reducing your odds of having it ignite. Pruning it is another good option so that the fire can pass underneath of it. We often recommend to prune to 2 meters as long as the tree is mature enough. Then a surface fire can pass underneath a lot of these conifer trees and have minimal impact. And often the bark is quite resilient as well. So some different strategies that you can employ. So when we're looking at the immediate zone, I'll focus here for a moment. This is the most important area, the zone right around your home and structures, 0 to 1.5 meters. So that's about 5 feet, give or take. That you want to have a fuel-free zone. So any man-made items or any combustible materials, you want to not have them in this area. And I'm often asked about grass. While green grass is not going to be susceptible to fire spreading very easily. It takes a lot of energy to burn green grass. As long as it's cut to about 10 centimeters and maintained, it's not going to be as much of a concern. And when we're doing our assessments, when we're looking at our properties and trying to determine what's flammable and what's not, we do that during full green up conditions. So we do that in sort of the month of June and beyond. And what that does is we know that in the month of May, or as the snow melts, we're going to get a lot more drier fuels, including the grasses, that are going to be more susceptible to fires. But certainly it's a concern, but when we're doing our assessments, we're looking at it in full summer conditions. And that's going to be where we decide to take our actions. And so we're going to create an environment in that immediate zone that is not going to sustain a surface fire, and therefore not be able to spread to the home. We want no chance of direct flame contact here. And we're also trying to limit the radiant heat. That's the heat, if you think about your campfire, the heat coming off your campfire, that's your radiant heat. So we want to limit that as well. And then our principal strategies here are fuel removal and fuel conversion in this zone. So I mentioned earlier some of the plants that are great. Anything deciduous, any shrubs with that sort of leafy component, they're going to retain water really well. A lot of times they're short, sort of low growing, and they're non-resinous, so they're much less volatile. We talk about mulch a lot, bark mulch. That's a very, very receptible bed for embers. So if an ember lands into your mulch, it's going to ignite it and therefore have an opportunity to spread to the structures or the home itself. You can easily convert that to rock or gravel, and they have a lot of colored rock out there now that can be really helpful. When you're able to do that conversion, it's a really resilient move there. We talked a little bit about the grasses already. Your long grasses, cured meaning dead, those are really volatile as well. So you want to avoid those in and around the home as much as possible. Anything that can dry out quickly and has those needle components are not a great choice for around the home. And cedar trees are a really good example. We see that often where they're right up against the home, just a sort of really receptive to embers, igniting them and transferring to the home. Let's move out now to the intermediate zone. The intermediate zone runs from 1.5 meters to 10 meters, so about 30 feet from the home. What we want to do in this area is create an environment that's only going to support a fire of lower intensity and rate of spread. So this is not a combustion-free zone anymore. What we want to remember is the fire, as it enters into this zone, We want it to be reducing its momentum, if you will, and having less and less opportunity to spread towards the home. So we're really trying to create an environment that's going to either we're going to do fuel reduction, fuel removal, and fuel conversion in this area. So again, we're just trying to slow the fire down in this area, but we want to maintain sort of that visual aspect, right? That quality of life, the wildlife habitat, and things of that nature. So you can pick and choose a little bit more in this zone. And you don't have to cut down every conifer tree in this area, but I would recommend certainly either isolating it or pruning it at the very least, and pay special attention to how mature it is and how close the needles are to the structures. We're thinking about radiant heat now and how much that's going to impact the structures. And let's move into the exterior, the extended zone. And if you look at this photograph, it's the the 10 meters to 30 meters area of the property. And what we're trying to do in this zone is to create an environment that will reduce the wildland fire's intensity as it enters into this zone. So we think about our fully involved crown fire. That's the fire that goes from the ground to the tops of the trees. As it hits 30 meters from your home, so it's about 100 feet from your home, we want it to now drop back to the ground as it enters into this zone. So that's going to turn it back into a surface fire. And the way we do that is through creating that environment of it's understory thinning. So if you see these photos, the before and after, we haven't clear cut the area, but we've certainly taken action to reduce the amount of fuels available. Pruning to 2 meters is a really good practice. It allows the fire to pass underneath the canopy without igniting from the bottom to the top of those trees, and also spacing them 3 meters apart. That's crown to crown, so that's the sort of the foliage to the foliage, and that allows it limits the radiant heat's ability to preheat the fuels around it and transfer easily. So pruning to 2 meters and separating 3 meters apart crown to crown is a really good option. I would certainly suggest being very selective in this area and how you cut things. You don't want to leave only mature trees. You want to have sort of those immature trees as well, so the younglings able to continue growing as well. So you can isolate those and have them certainly spread 3 meters apart from the other trees as well. And what that's going to do is going to keep that diversity on your property, because you want to make sure that you don't have all your trees sort of die off at the same time and then you're left with nothing. So be very selective with how you decide to cut if you are cutting trees. And again, I want to stress, have a look at your bylaws ahead of making any changes on your property, because there are some bylaws, especially as we get down into the cottage country in the Muskokas areas, that may have some bylaws that contradict some of the information I'm providing today. So if you live within a municipality, certainly check within that municipality as well. But in this zone, we're looking at sort of removing and pruning and trimming a lot of these areas as our main strategies. The last one I want to speak to here is vegetation management. It's sort of maintaining that ignition zone, the vegetation in that ignition zone. We all know that trees continue to grow and grass continues to grow, and so we want to make sure that the work that we've done, and it might only take you a weekend to do the work that I've just described, or it might take you several weekends depending on what your property looks like. But if you're doing all this work and you're not maintaining it, then you're not going to have the impact that you need to increase your resilience come time of a wildland fire event. The idea being, if there's an evacuation that comes through your area, you have to leave the area, you can sort of leave the area knowing you did everything you can to increase your resilience for that wildland fire, and you don't necessarily need to be there. And I'm often asked about sprinkler systems in this case. Sprinkler systems can be great, except when you're evacuated and there's no one left to sort of maintain that sprinkler system after you've run out of gas after the first 8 hours, for example, that system might not be as reliable as what I'm talking about today with the vegetation management. That will last sort of the entire duration of your evacuation and might be more effective. So I would often say don't not have a sprinkler system, but use both together, I think would be the better option, rather than simply depending on your sprinkler system alone. you might have a much more you're going to increase the resilience significantly of your property in those with that approach. So when I say conducting assessments, there's no guarantees, but the effective home ignition zone treatment can dramatically increase your home's survival chances. And we're certainly not helpless. Those changes that you do make, especially in that immediate zone, that 1.5 meters from the structures, can make a huge difference. And I also want to say, I keep saying structures, not just the home or cottage. That's because your outbuildings, your sheds, or any buildings that you have on your property, they're also an exposure to your main structure. And so they need to be treated as a standalone structure. So you treat them the same way. So you create that 1.5 meter zone around them as your intermediate zone, and then move out from there as well from them. So treat them the same way as you would your main building, so that if they ignite, you want to make sure that they're not going to spread to your home, to your main building as well. So if you treat them that way, then you're in a much more resilient spot. As we continue, I just want to pass on some resources and some opportunities for folks. So the Wildfire Community Preparedness Day event, this happens every year. It's a $500 grant that's available for folks that are talking about wildland fire safety in the community. You can do this in various different ways. You can hold a community barbecue if it's your first time. You get folks together talking about FireSmart and different opportunities. There may be an opportunity for the M&R to support your event, depending on what we have going on in and around that time. There are also opportunities to have cleanup days. So you may have hosted an event previous and the community is ready to take action and start reducing the fuels around any given area. Then you can start that process and use the $500 towards maybe renting a chipper or dumping fees or whatever the case may be. We do know $500 isn't a lot, but what the hope is that it gets the conversation started with folks in the community, and it gets folks together, gets them talking about the impacts of wildland fires. And so you can host an event anytime between October and May. So you essentially you want to so it's May and October, not October and May. But what that is holding an event, getting folks together and talking about fire and using the $500 for your event in that regard. But certainly you can apply on firesmartcanada.ca, like I said, between November 1st and January 31st. And it's open to any individual or organization. So anybody can apply for this one. And if you've already applied in the past, you're open to apply again every year for this grant. I want to speak a little bit about a local FireSmart committee. We do have a new program called the Neighborhood Recognition Program, and I'll speak to it in the next slide. But first, what is really important for folks to understand is if you have an individual in your neighborhood that's really interested in sort of picking up the FireSmart torch and getting things going, I highly recommend starting that individual starting a FireSmart committee within the community, and that just recruit others from the neighborhood. It could be homeowners, it could be fire professionals, landowners, planners, just members of interest groups, anyone who would fit the bill in that regard. Gets a committee of folks together to start taking action in the community to increase the resilience. And with the neighborhood recognition program, there are some milestones that you need to reach. These 6 points, and when you get to the end of when you get to the point of actually applying for this, and if you're successful, there is a small grant as well available to support your neighborhood processes for resilience. And so essentially we talked about identifying that neighborhood champion. That neighborhood champion forms then a committee, and then with that committee, you can get a main representative, get in touch with me, someone who can come in and do an assessment, a wildland hazard assessment in the community. And then you can develop a neighborhood plan through the committee. That'll help you come up with a mitigation plan for what actions to take throughout the neighborhood. And then you can teach residents some FireSmart knowledge and involve them in the cleanup efforts as well. That can be done through a community preparedness day event as well. And then you can apply for the recognition program and go through that program, potentially see a small grant available to you. I believe it's $250 in addition to the $500 grant that you get for the preparedness day. So you can celebrate the successes through the neighborhood recognition application and renewal. So you would have to renew that every year as well. I talked about the maintenance piece. It is very important. But with that, you'd become a nationally recognized FireSmart neighborhood. So certainly, if there's any interest in taking on this program, I would say after you've identified a neighborhood champion and established a neighborhood committee, then certainly reach out to me and I can support the rest of your journey through the neighborhood recognition program. I do want to mention there's some really great resources available to folks online at firesmartcanada.ca. I highly recommend FireSmart 101. It's about 45 minutes long. It's a really interactive training program and it's really easy to complete. I highly recommend it to anybody who's interested in getting started and creating a more resilient property. FireSmart begins at home. That manual is sort of the Bible, if you will, of the FireSmart concepts I've been speaking to today. Your FireSmart guide to landscaping just offers different plant species that are really helpful in increasing your resilience as well. We talked about the neighborhood recognition program and the home ignition zone self-assessment. There's a checklist that you can go through on your property to help you understand where you might be falling short or maybe not. There's also a poster to offer tips and tricks for each of the ignition zone areas for the three areas we spoke to. There's a last minute checklist if you are evacuated and you need to take some actions on your property. That checklist can be really helpful. There's a home development guide for new construction. So that's really helpful for if you're doing a new build or a renovation and you're looking to see what materials might be really helpful for you. And there's a wildfire resilience best practice checklist as well for home construction. And then, of course, we have a slew of FireSmart fact sheets available as well. So I do want to take the last few slides just to offer some quick tips for anybody who's interested in taking quick actions on your property. First thing I would recommend is download the FireSmart Begins at Home app. You can get a self-assessment on there. It can be done right online rather than using the paper copy one, and it gives you some tips and tricks there as well. Then I would say look at the deck. This one here, you want to make sure that you have any combustible materials under your deck are going to be susceptible to embers that blow in under your deck, and they'll ignite and potentially ignite your deck, which then will in turn ignite your home. And so keep a 1.5 meter non-combustible zone around the house and deck. And if you have openings, if your deck isn't closed off, I would highly recommend closing it off as well so that any embers don't have an opportunity to lodge themselves under the deck. Clean your gutters, maintain your roof. Keep your decks and balconies clear of leaves and debris. And of course, put away your patio furniture. And if you have a combustible welcome mat or anything like that, you want to think about what can burn right next to the home if an ember lands there, and make that adjustment accordingly. Keep your grass cut and your weeds. If your grass is like mine, you have a lot of weeds, so keep them cut to 10 centimeters or less, and they're going to be in a good spot for resilience as well. Plant wildfire resistant vegetation to reduce your flammability. So that's just swapping out sort of those conifer trees right up against your home for that sort of flammable or that resistant vegetation. And again, I mentioned the landscaping guide available at firesmartcanada.ca. It's really helpful in helping you choose what to plant right up against your home. We didn't touch on vents, but these are a really important one as well. Any openings, except for the dryer vent. The dryer vent needs to be that Louvre's type vent for safety reasons. But the other vents into your attic or anything that's opening into your house, you can use a 3mm screen. And again, it has to be the steel screen, not the vinyl screen that'll just melt with embers. But you can use the 3mm version on your vents. That'll allow air to continue flowing, but will reduce the opportunity for embers to enter into the home. And then I mentioned pruning trees to create a 2-meter clearance from the ground up, and then 3-meter spacing in that extended zone for the conifer trees. And if you're keeping conifer trees in that intermediate zone, I would recommend isolating them and be very careful with how close they are to your structures as well. And your firewood, at least 10 meters away from your home or any structure. If an ember lands on your firewood pile and ignites it, it puts off a lot of heat, and that's going to allow an exposure to your home or the structure. and even just through radiant heat, because they'll burn pretty intensely for quite some time, depending on the size of the wood pile, of course. And your sheds and your structures, I mentioned it already, but keep them to the same standards as your home. If they ignite, that radiant heat or direct flame contact is going to now threaten your main structures. So they need to be treated the same way as your home so that you can increase your resilience. And finally, have a wildfire evacuation plan for your household. And that's just a quick conversation with folks in the household so that everybody knows what to do in the event of a wildland fire event. If you have somebody out on a lake, for example, and the call comes in, what's the process for that? Where do we go if we need to be evacuated? Or if we're scattered in different areas, where do we meet up and things of that nature? So just have that conversation, have that plan ready to go. There's some resources again at firesmartcanada.ca to help you with this. But certainly having a plan is great practice. So that concludes my presentation here today. I did want to mention affps.mitigation@ontario.ca as an excellent resource for folks if they have any FireSmart questions or any support required on their FireSmart journey. You can reach out to us there, and we can provide that sort of direct support for you and answer any questions you may have. We touch here on this final photo just on some of the elements I touched on in my top 10 here, but certainly a lot of things you can do on your property to help increase your resilience. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to the audience today, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions that folks might have.
Thanks, Shane, for your time, for delivering this important information. That was awesome. Gavin, if I could get you to share FOCA's Q&A slide again, then we've got a couple questions that we can get to. Perfect. Thanks so much. So we talked a lot about conifer trees. Is there kind of a best of the worst in terms of conifer trees? Like, are they all at equal risk of ignition, or do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, the conifer trees, it can be tricky, right? There are some species that have sort of, they call it the old man's beard on the bark, where it can help the fire sort of wake up the tree. So watch for that component. It's some bark, like your red pines and your white pines, are really resilient to wildland fires. As long as the needle components don't go right down to the ground, oftentimes you'll see a fire pass right by a white and red pine tree without sort of igniting the rest of it. So your mature ones are much better in that case. But when you run into sort of your black spruce and your white spruce trees with the needle component right to the ground, those are really volatile and ready to ignite, especially under dry conditions. So those are some of the things you watch for. Cedar trees, again, a real big challenge, especially when the needle component is right to the ground. So really what you want to think about is, how is the embers going to ignite this tree? And if you do have direct flame contact, how's that going to impact the tree as well?
Okay, great, thanks. And is some of that addressed in that great list of resources you provided in your presentation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you have FireSmart Canada CA and the Begins at Home manual is really helpful and helps cover off some of these items as well.
Perfect. So if you have a wooden deck, will watering it down during the time prior to evacuation, if a wildfire is in the area, help reduce its fuel capacity?
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad idea. Anytime you can water down the area, you're adding moisture to that area. The only tricky part with it is how much sunlight is hitting it and how long will it take for that water to evaporate. So I would say, although it's good practice, it might be tough to rely on that for a long period of time, especially if it's a really hot day with the sun sort of beating on it, evaporating all that water quickly. So not a bad option, but certainly I would look at more resilient options as a long-term solution.
Okay, thanks. Another one about decks. So decks tend to be framed in wood, even if covered with composite decking. Any suggestions or concerns about the deck framing?
Yeah, so decking it's challenging for sure. There's no sort of one size fits all. The composite's the best choice, but as you mentioned, we're looking at that direct flame contact or even ember management. I've seen there are some sort of fire resistant paints or sort of the stains
Okay.
out there. So do your research. I can't recommend anything specific there, but I would say definitely do some research on those products before you add them, and you might be in a better spot using some of those. But certainly decks can be a very big challenge for us in that regard. We are working closely with FireSmart Canada to try to come up with some more sort of wholesome solutions for these. But creating that sort of 1.5 meter zone around your deck and not allowing that direct flame contact is really a best practice. I've seen in some of the research, sometimes I believe it was in the Fort Mac fire, or maybe the Slave Lake fire. I can't recall which one, but I saw photographs of an ember landing in the middle of the deck and sort of burning a hole in the deck, but not really spreading um, like to the whole deck, right? So even if you do have that situation, that the intensity of that ember, and again, every situation is going to be different. It might allow it to just sort of burn itself out, or if it's right up against the house, it might be easily able to spread to the home. We're working sort of in percentages when it comes to the deck, and so we want to take every action we can to increase our resilience. But certainly, it's not a perfect solution. But I would say limiting direct flame contact is your best bet with decks.
Okay, that makes sense. And how much of a threat are fireworks?
Fireworks are definitely a concern. Fireworks can be so, especially under dry conditions. When we see restricted fire zones, for example, in place, we know things are really dry. So I would say anybody who's igniting fireworks should understand that they're responsible for the costs of any fire that may be caused from igniting those fireworks. And so we have seen folks being charged with sort of the cost of a fire after their fireworks sort of went the wrong way for them. So be very, very careful. Always, I would say, always over top of water where you can, where it makes sense to. But be very aware that could lead to a bad situation for you. So certainly be very, very careful with fireworks.
Yeah, of course. And with our audience, we find it's also important to find a balance, with fire smart safety as well as keeping a natural environment. So, and some of the materials you referenced, or speaking with you, is there some stuff referenced in those materials regarding that?
Yeah, the FireSmart Guide to Landscaping, it's available at firesmartcanada.ca. That has, I believe it's over 250 different species in there that are listed as fire resilient.
Nice.
And so they're really a really good option to look into if you are looking to sort of convert some of those vegetation items around your home. We don't want anybody to clear cut their property. That's not the idea with FireSmart. And oftentimes you can have a more sort of a more beautiful property if you've taken the right steps, right? If you have trees sort of on top of each other, it might not be as aesthetically pleasing as having them sort of spread out a little bit more, where you can see through the area, inviting more wildlife and things like that. So there could be some great options there available.
Great, thanks. So we saw that email you provided, I think, on your last slide there. Is that how folks would get in touch with experts who could come assess their property or maybe do a talk for their local association?
Yeah, so we can certainly look at options to do a talk for the local association. The assessments, we don't complete assessments unless folks are going through the program, the
Okay.
NRP program, but we do have self-assessment options. So we do have a checklist available for folks that are working on their own properties, and it helps walk you right through what to look for and where you might be falling short, or some steps you can take there. So certainly you can reach out to that. That checklist is available at firesmartcanada.ca as well, but we're more than happy to provide it to you via email as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
No, my
I think
pleasure.
that wraps up all the questions we had. So I'll ask Gavin to flip to the next slide and we can wrap up. Perfect. So again, we want to thank you, Shane, for sharing your knowledge with us today. We know there's a lot to learn, but this is a great start. If you found today's webinar useful, we hope you'll sign up for another upcoming FOCA event and access our other resources and publications on all our topics. You can visit foca.on.ca and click news, subscribe to be added to our monthly e-news list for updates on cottage country issues year round. If you know of a lake or road association near you that isn't yet a part of FOCA, please spread the word and tell them why they should be. We hope you feel you've gotten some good advice today. And if you have and you're positioned to do so, please consider making a donation to FOCA or becoming a friend of FOCA, our valued annual supporters. Next slide, please. So as you exit, you'll be taken to an event survey. We'd love your feedback. And sometime early next week, you'll receive an email with a PDF copy of these slides as well as today's event recording. Next slide. And Shane, we want to thank you once again for your expertise and time in sharing information about FireSmart in our communities. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care,
Thanks.
folks.
Take care.